Okay, so I'm here with Manna Dabholkar. Did I get it?
Okay. Yes, you did. Almost.
Almost. And I'm actually really excited about this personally because I'm a student of mindset. I'm a student of success mindset. And I also, okay, so I'm here with Manna. Oops, 1 second. A little feedback. Okay, there we go. But I also believe in the power of purpose and the importance of purpose when it comes to not only achievement, but also to the betterment of our society and to the betterment of our world. So I came across Manna's profile on Facebook and I started to see all of these amazing things that she's involved in. And I was hoping personally, out of a personal curiosity, that I could have a chance to sit down, chat with her, and learn from her. And then I also am really grateful for the opportunity to share this with my audience as well, who is very much into personal development, mindset, growth. And I'm hoping that we can learn a little bit, Manna, about your professional experience. And I'm very excited to talk about your nonprofit work that you're doing. I got a chance to look into some of that, and she's doing some really, really exciting stuff. So for the people that don't know you, let me give a little bit of an introduction. And so Manna has had over a decade of leadership experience in the profit and nonprofit sectors. She stands at the intersection of purpose and profit, has a passion for public service, and has a ton of experience in humanitarian aid, foreign aid sustainability. She spearheaded operations for the American Red Cross as the director of regional operations. After leading one of the most prestigious organizations, the Red Cross, her desire was to be in the trenches, and she has a zest to bring humanitarian relief to socially disadvantaged families and make the planet a safer place for our children. And that desire led her to Gift Global Initiative, advocating for and empowering the most disadvantaged and vulnerable families in some of the poorest areas over the planet. Today, under her supervision and leadership, Gift empowers 10,000 children every year. And for Gift, prevention is a key component. And actually, this is something I'm very excited to talk about because they take a preventative rather than a reactive stance to helping those children. So I'm hoping we can talk about how your focus is on getting to the root cause of exploitation. I think that's a very fascinating take. And so Manna's, she's a legend. She's a legend, and I'm very grateful that you're here. So Manna, if you would, a little bit about where you were before you got into the nonprofit area. What were you doing before that?
I was
And
always in it.
oh,
I
you've
was
been
always, yeah, I've done human rights law,
okay.
but didn't want to practice law because I don't want to get into that. But I always, like I said, I always wanted to be out in the trenches and not have my opinion be built by other people's take on things, rather have the know-how myself, rather know what's going on out in the field,
Mhm.
um, which led me to the American Red Cross, which was an amazing experience to work with them for. I worked with them for about five or 6 years.
Okay.
Um, but what I realized was that I climbed the ranks too quick at the Red Cross, and it took away what I really wanted to do, which was to be out in the field. And I found myself in the office running the operations, not being able to experience what's going on in the trenches.
Okay.
Red Cross does some amazing work, but the people who really do the work are the front line, the first aid responders.
Wow.
The people who are not in the office.
Yeah.
They're on the call 24 hours a day,
Yeah.
and they don't make a lot of money, but that doesn't. They're not at the Red Cross for money. They're at the Red Cross for their passion,
Yes.
and I was missing that. I was missing being out in the trenches. Now, people might say, "Who was stopping you? You have gone volunteer for them." I did, but what I did was I started raising money for human trafficking nonprofits who were out there rescuing children and women and men. Um, I found myself on a police raid that was going in to rescue children. And this is not in the US, this was overseas because I wanted to see how they're using the money that I was raising.
You found yourself on a police raid, or you
I was a part of the police raid because I wanted to know what's going on with, I was raising a lot of money for them and I wanted to see if it's really being used.
Yeah.
Everyone who donates to nonprofits has the question, right? The big question, what's happening with that money?
Yes.
We don't think about that when we buy a pair of shoes for ourselves, but we think about giving $1 to a nonprofit and then 100 questions about it. But I was the same person. I was that person who had tons of questions. So I found myself on this police raid that was going in to rescue women. And this is about 15 years ago. I thought I had a very poor understanding of trafficking at that point.
Yes.
So I thought that we will go in and find 17, 18-year-old women, and we end up finding 3 and 4-year-old babies being groomed into trafficking. They were tied on tabletops. These children, I don't want to get into describing it, but it was such a terrible scene.
Yeah.
These kids, they're not even kids, they're babies. 3 and 4-year-old babies groomed into trafficking.
Yeah.
By the time they're 15 or 16, that's the life they know. And that night changed everything for me because I started questioning how nonprofits work. And I started questioning why humans are so reactive to everything. Why aren't we more proactive? Why don't we say that, there are millions of kids out there who live in environments and neighborhoods that will put them at risk of being trafficked? They're not yet trafficked, but they would be, right? Why aren't we thinking about them? Why do we have to rush to rescue a child instead of saying, oh, let me be more proactive and bring school sponsorships or educate or medical fund or bring them opportunity where they can, even if they have to live in the slum that's controlled by the Mexican cartels, they still have the opportunity. Their mom has the opportunity to provide for the child without getting exploited. I learned that lesson that night.
So you're there, and then you step back and you look at this, and you're seeing all of this nonprofit work happening that's in reaction mode. That there's this tragedy that happens. This is clearly unacceptable. Yes. And by the way, I'm like you. I had no idea the sheer numbers of human trafficking. I think in the United States alone, the numbers are in the hundreds of thousands of children. Yeah. Children. It's bizarre. So I had a little bit of a learning experience. It sounds like yours was much more personal. And so you kind of step back and you say, instead of trying to treat the symptom, let's go after the cause and see if we can take it out. Yeah.
I mean, it's really about, like you said, you're a student of mindset.
Yeah.
And it is a human mindset. We probably get maximum satisfaction when we feel like we're rescuing someone.
100%.
Rather than saying that this child is not in traffic, let me do something for this child so that child will never have to go through that experience. That's what I wanted to do. I still want to change that mindset where people, it's great. And I don't want to undermine nonprofits who do that work because it's very important to do that work. But there's also another spectrum, the other side of it, which is prevention. Yes. So we need to, if you have $1 to donate, this is what I tell people. One, don't go ahead and just donate money. Give your time so that you can understand what the nonprofit does with your money when you do donate, right?
Yes.
Secondly, if you have $1 to donate, split the dollar. Split that between a nonprofit that's doing prevention and a nonprofit that's doing the rescue work, right? So if I have, let's say, a disaster strikes in Lebanon, right? If you have $1, which it did last year, right? And we faced this situation. My team was on the ground 2 weeks after the explosion in Beirut, providing medical aid, and we still encounter so much. There's so much struggle to raise money for reconstruction because all the money went to one nonprofit for providing first aid right after the explosion.
Yes.
And that nonprofit's gone. long gone, right? They are first responder organization. They don't spend money on reconstruction. So if you donate out of reactive human nature, because
Yes.
there was an explosion, I really want to go there and help,
Right.
you're not really helping at all. Your money's wasted. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, and that's very sad to hear, right? Because there are a lot of people, I'm sure, who are very well-meaning with their money, and then to find out, and I'm wondering, is this affect? I'm sure it's probably affected by the news cycle then. So
Yes.
something big happens, then, and there's an outpouring of money, and then as soon as somebody in the United States runs their mouth politically, then the news cycle changes, and then all the money dries up.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot tell you, Peter, how much the back end of running a nonprofit is so interesting.
Yeah.
It will be so interesting for someone like you because you deal with, and GIFT is a grassroots level nonprofit, but I work with head of states from different countries because there's an educational aspect of it that I want to teach corporations, I want to teach governments how to really give because everyone wants to give. That's not the problem. The problem isn't that there isn't money. The problem is that there's too much corruption and greed. So the money doesn't trickle down to the right cause. And most people like you and I are not aware of it.
Yeah.
You see?
Totally.
So you might give to I don't want to name nonprofits, but you don't want to give money to a huge corporation that's raising money, but it's piggybacking. They piggyback on smaller grassroots level nonprofits because they don't have the infrastructure to do the work.
Sure.
In that case, I just rather give money to the grassroots level nonprofits that's doing the work.
Right.
Because you know what? That money won't be spent on millions of dollars of salaries and other expenses, which smaller nonprofits don't have that.
Yes. So I'm currently contributing, and maybe I shouldn't name them. Maybe this is something I'll ask offline. But I'm currently contributing to a charity to support trafficked victims. And I did see in one of your other interviews, you do say that one thing to be conscientious of is the right questions to ask of a nonprofit. So I'm just curious and I also saw something that you're doing, which is remarkable. You said that the average nonprofit, 75 cents of your dollar goes to the children or to the cause. And that at GIFT, which is your nonprofit, what is it, 90?
Yeah, it's about 90 cents. And for certain programs, it's actually 100% of it because we don't have, so GIFT doesn't have a large staff, number one. So there is a board. Every nonprofit has a board, but they're all volunteers. So they're very passionate. They have one country each to expand the initiative.
Yes.
We have few consultants who work with us.
Mm-hmm.
They fundraise or they do operational stuff, but everything that you look at when you look at GIFT is volunteer based. Volunteers run it.
Yeah.
And I love it because there's obviously good and bad with it because you can't fire a volunteer.
Can you not?
You cannot. No, I mean,
you really
can't. You say goodbye, but you can't really fire them if you wanted to, because they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. But at the same time, what nonprofits don't understand, there is so much money in terms of government grants and foundation grants that you don't have to use. When Peter gives me $1, I don't have to use that $1 for my operational expenses. I can run my nonprofit purely based on the grants that governments and foundations give.
And so where does that dollar go?
That if you give me $1, that should go to the program that you donated to.
100%. So it's because you're volunteer run that you're able to give so much of the donations back directly to the programs?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Absolutely. It's especially with school sponsorships. We don't pay the family because you'll see if there's a family that I'm trying to support by bringing school sponsorship for the child, and if I pay directly to the family, that money will never make it to the school. And you learn these things as I spent 15, 20 years doing this.
I imagine you're very frustrated to learn that.
Well, it's a culture shift for some of these communities.
Sure.
What you will see is there's a community right by US-Mexico border, 10 minutes from in Tijuana, 10 minutes from US border. 1,000 homes, completely controlled by the Mexican cartel. Completely, like there's a shooting every day, kids are killed, kidnapped, women raped, trafficking, all of that. We work there every 2 weeks. We work with those families. Yes, in the slum.
Wow.
And and we've been doing this 6 years, about 6 years. But what you notice is when we started doing the work down there, these families were so used to getting money or free donations. So these groups with, other nonprofits or church would come in once in a while, every 3 or 4 months, they dump all the used goods and they'll leave. So these families are used to receiving free stuff. It took us 6 years to train them not to ever ask me for money. It took 6 years for me to train them to say, I don't want money. I'd rather take an iPad for my child.
This is what I love about what you're doing. This is really what I love about what you're doing. And I hope this doesn't sound not compassionate. Obviously I want people to have the things they need. But what I've learned so far about gifts is that it's not just about giving things to people. It's about creating a space where they learn to reach out for the help they need. Yeah. And I think that's so, I'm getting chills talking about it because, it's the Bible thing, right? Give a man a fish versus teach a man to fish. And having somebody participate in their own salvation, I just think it's incredible that you're not only going proactive, but you're helping them instill a mindset, which is, I am responsible for my own salvation here.
Yeah, I mean, if you really care about bringing about a change, it has to be a sustainable change. If you think that those 1,000 households are going to rely on gift for 10 years, that's failure to me. I don't want them to rely on me. I don't want them to rely on the government. I want them to create their own self-sustaining little city, whether it's through jobs creation, bringing businesses in, whatever it is. Now, it doesn't look the way it used to 6 years ago because now there are two big factories that have been set up right inside the slum and these people have jobs.
That's incredible.
And why did that happen? It happened because of social media. It happened because I was down there every 2 weeks sharing about this amazing place, 1,000 families, cheap labor, come on and give them jobs so the women don't have to go and prostitute. The women don't have to get trafficked. The children don't have to get trafficked or rely on the cartel. And it happened. It took 6 years, but they have a big factory in the slum.
So two things here, right? The first thing, you're describing being in a town and it's a cartel town, right? A cartel slum, cartel run. And so you're going into this town every 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And are you bumping into cartel? Are they there? Do they know what you're doing?
Yeah, of course they know. Every time you cross the border, they know that you're there. But they have never created a problem for us, except for once when they took away my volunteers' cars. They just took them away to go find them. But they are always there. We see their presence at events because we do a lot of things down there. It's not one particular thing. It's bringing hospitals to speak with the women about childcare, bringing teachers to teach the kids English, little things. But when you look at all these things collectively over 6 years, it has changed the face of that slum. So yes, the cartel is always there. They will sit in the back at the events. We know they're there, but so far, no issues.
That's crazy. And then, so what in this proactive approach? It seems like you're going at the root cause. What in your mind is the cause of? What are the conditions that make it possible for trafficking to take place in the first place?
Greed, human greed, definitely. And then there's in certain countries, there's a cycle of poverty that people are unable to break out of because, like I said to you, we are reactive. So we try to dump blankets on homeless people instead of finding them jobs. We try to dump food on them, and all those things are required, but they only go so far, and they'll only make their children. It's really like people need to look at it as a culture shift. The more you give free things away, people expect free things. And that's not the way to build up anyone. It's not the way to empower anyone,
Right.
if that's what if you're in the business of making money as a nonprofit, not really making an impact, then yes, you want them to stay the way they are, because I can show hungry kids from Tijuana or from Africa, and it can raise a lot of money.
Wow.
So you have to individually have to decide as a leader, as a nonprofit leader, what's your goal? Are you really trying to empower them, or are you trying to make money?
So what are those good questions then? So if I'm thinking about shopping for a charity that I want to support, or somebody flags me down while I'm on the promenade, what are the types of questions that I should be asking to know
Where can I come volunteer for you? Number one.
Can I volunteer?
How can I give my time initially?
Yeah.
You don't have to be physically on the ground volunteering. You could provide them with your skill set. You can say, I'm really good at accounting. Do you need someone to volunteer for your team? Nonprofits always need volunteers.
Yes.
So the best thing you can do to make sure that your money is going to the right cause is volunteer for them.
Gotcha.
And really understand how they work, how they function.
Okay.
Because even if like mission statements and vision statements sound amazing, but there are nonprofits who do incredible work which cannot be captured in their mission statement.
Amen.
So you want to give them time and understand it before you put your money in it.
I love that.
And once you do start giving your money, you can ask them what the money is going towards and how much of it is going towards the program is against paying operational stuff.
Very good.
And most, just like US-based nonprofits get audited by the IRS. So we cannot get away with shady things anyways. People think nonprofits do a lot of shady things, and I will tell you that it's really tough to get away with it because IRS will audit you. They look at everything that's going on every year. We have to file taxes. We don't pay taxes, but we have to actually file taxes and tell them what's happening with the donors' money.
Gotcha.
And the restrictions on nonprofit in terms of taxes or all the different formalities that we have to do in the US is really strict. Okay. So if you are, and this is also why I like to speak and the business side comes in play, is that corporations, and we'll talk about that today, but corporations don't understand mindful giving. They will only give because they want to associate with a big brand. So I donated to the Red Cross. Sounds amazing. What happened to that money? Mm-hmm. Ask that question if you really care about the change. If you don't, then that's fine.
Well, I've seen people doing social programs, and sometimes I feel like that's just because they know that I can't remember the name of the generation. Is it Gen Z or Gen Y? They know that there's a generation that will buy your product more if you give. And so I think on the one hand, it's fantastic that there are these, there's this push towards giving, but I love, again, you're coming back to being more mindful and being more proactive about where is this money going. And I think if there are more people like you, what we could start to see is frankly, a transformation of the planet. I think you would see a lot more prosperity happening in a lot of those communities. So I learned a little bit about some of the projects you're doing, and I saw something about solar lights and sports. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, it's a program called Sports for Solar.
Yeah.
So we combine two things which are extremely important in not just low-income neighborhoods, but also overall. One is solar lights, so to teach our children about clean energy and how to take care of our planet. Yes. And the other aspect of sports is to make it fun for the kids to be involved in it. So what we do is we coach children from low-income neighborhoods in any sport, but typically it's soccer because that's very popular. Mm-hmm. There's tennis, basketball, and then twice a year there's an event in that community. All the kids participate in it, and instead of giving them plastic trophies, we give them solar lights, portable solar lights, because these neighborhoods don't have light. And I'm talking about Africa, Mexico, like areas that have never seen light, or they are stealing electricity from the grid, which actually costs money to the people who pay for that.
Interesting.
So by bringing portable solar lights, some of these families don't have, they live in shacks. So they move their shack from one place to the other. So they can take the solar light with them.
Yeah.
The children can study longer during winter hour days. They're safe because they can carry the light with them going back and forth to school.
Yeah.
The women can use it for safety. Small businesses can use it without having to pay electricity bills or not having electricity and having to shut down. They can use portable lights. So it's really creating a self-sustaining city. It comes back to that. But we do it in a fun way where we invite diplomats from local embassies to come participate in it. You know, if they can fund the event, they can fund it. They get publicity. They also get publicity back home in their own countries. So that program has really spreading faster because we are getting PR and publicity in different ways. So if, for instance, if I am doing a sports for solar in South Africa and the ambassador of UAE in South Africa comes for the event, what's happening is the media in the UAE is talking about it because their diplomat is doing this good work in South Africa. The South African media is talking about it too. But for us, it's important to bring attention to that community, bring attention to the sport and to the cause of educating kids about clean energy. So there's so many things happening in this. I just love Sports for Solar so much.
I mean, honestly, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant program. Look, all those things that you're bringing together and how it's such a subtle solution can make such a big difference. I think it's really brilliant. And the kids have to earn them, right?
Yes, they have to. You don't get it free. That's the other thing. I'm not handing out solar lights.
Yep.
You have to participate. You have to play, and then you get a light. The light stays for 4 years, so they get light for 4 years. It's saving government's money, so they're not stealing. There are no live wires in the slums because they're stealing energy from the grid.
I see.
So when you walk in South Africa, for instance, in this slum where it's so crazy because this slum is Nelson Mandela's home. He lived there as a child. And then they have built a nice, beautiful museum right next to the slum. The slum has 4,000 families who have no water and no light. But there's $1 million, maybe $5-6 million museum to Nelson Mandela right next to it. And when you walk to the slum, you see some of my videos. I was actually on my crutches. So as we were doing emergency aid, I fell and fractured my foot. So I was walking in the slum on my crutches. You can see live wires all over because these people are trying to steal electricity.
When you said, can you say that again? Live virus?
Wires.
Wires, got you.
Yeah. So what they do is they hook the wires up to the grid, and
they're live, so they're like sparking. Oh my God.
Yeah. And then some of these shacks will go up in fire every few weeks.
Yeah.
And the kids are at the receiving end of it because they get stuck in the shacks. They can't escape. So now that creates another big problem of, you have all these kids with like burn marks on their skin. So this simple solution of instead of waiting for the government to approve a solar panel, just give them portable lights. They're cheap and they stay for 4 to 5 years. And they do exact same thing that a panel would do.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What an awesome project. So I also checked in while I was doing research. I noticed that apparently women were disproportionately affected by COVID and in terms of unemployment. And then I saw, did you do a panel yesterday? It looked like.
I did. Yes.
Yeah. So inform our audience a little bit. What happened with regards to COVID and the unemployment for women in particular? And then is GIFT, is that one of the missions for GIFT?
Yes. Empowerment.
Yeah.
And I'll talk specifically about the solution to it than talking about the problem. But what's happening with COVID, just so that people understand, is last year, 2020, women lost 800 billion in income. Women. And we are not accounting for women in informal sectors like domestic workers, garment industry workers, street vendors. We're not talking about that. These are women in the workforce. They were laid off or their hours were cut, salaries were cut due to COVID. This is globally. I'm not talking US, globally.
I got you.
The World Bank thinks we lost about 64 million jobs for women. I think that is an underrepresented number. I think it has to be more than 64 million. But let's just stick with 64 million for now. And this is only economics. We are not talking about women who were already on the fringes of the society, like the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They had established a respectful income.
Mm-hmm.
They were either through small jobs or whatever it is that gift was providing them. They had established good amount of income for their families in a respectful way. They didn't have to go out and get traffic for that. But because of COVID, they're pushed back into the same place where they're trying so hard to get out of.
Right.
I gave an example yesterday. We were working with a family in Tijuana. This mother who used to be a drug addict, she was a drug dealer, and she would take her son and her daughter on the streets dealing in drugs, because in Mexico they don't take you to the prison if you're with a child, with a baby. So she would bring her boy and her daughter on the streets. It took us 6 years to get this woman clean, get her a job, get the kids in school. When COVID struck, we were not able to go to Mexico as often because the borders were closed. She lost her job. The two kids were out of school. The boy went to Sinaloa, which happens to be the home of Mexican cartel, Sinaloa. The daughter is 15, and now she lives with another man, and she's probably pregnant. And that's just one family completely destroyed by COVID-19.
Yeah.
No father, right? Most of these families don't have a father figure. What GIFT is doing is we have a program called GGI Works, GIFT Global Initiative Works.
Yeah.
It's creating these workshops which are run by the men and women in the community. There's a revolving microfinance fund, which is not giving out grants. We don't give out individual grants because that creates competition. We are going for culture shift. We want same equal representation for men and women in these communities to come together and say, okay, we have X amount of money. How are we going to use this money to create jobs in this community? How can we bring in business?
Right.
Great example of that is South Africa. One of the guys who runs a volunteer is going to get his license as a tour guide. And he's as a tour guide.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah.
So he wants to bring these tourists into the slums to show them these empowerment workshops that are creating, whether it is handcrafted fabrics or whatever it is that these women create.
Yes.
So that the tourist will pay for it and buy it from them, creating jobs for these women. We only provided them with the raw materials for it. So sewing machines, the training, I paid for his licensing. And I'm giving you one example, right?
Right.
So when you go to South Africa at the airport, you have these expensive handcrafted items. So instead of buying it for, let's say, $100 at the airport, you will get to see how the locals make it. And you'll get the same item for $50. But that runs someone's home for 6 months. Some kids kids can eat for 6 months.
And I'm really seeing now how what you're doing goes to the root. Like I can see how by doing that, you're creating a job and you're creating an economy essentially.
Yes, and this is where my Red Cross side comes into play, because think about it. What happens in a post-disaster situation is that we always try to start with zero or minus because people have lost so much.
Yes.
And we go in and we have a cookie cutter approach to providing aid. We will give them 8 kits or whatever it is that they need. The response may be quick, but it's not sustainable. Mm-hmm. Governments will start giving out these grants. Foundations or nonprofits will start giving out money, but it's not useful because you're giving money to maybe 50 families and there are 1,000 families. There's no real culture shift because the men in these communities are the decision makers. So if you give $50,000 to a family, the man decides what happens with the $50,000, not the woman. Guaranteed. So by saying that I'm not giving individual grants, I'm going to create a communal fund, a collective fund for you, the leaders, men and women, equal representation, come together and decide how you can use this money. And we'll give you support team. Right. If you need training, if you need money to get this kid who wanted the license, we'll do it for you.
Amazing.
you have to grow the economy. You can't just focus on your own household, because when you grow the community, it's going to help you as a family as well.
Amazing. I love it. There's another project that I heard about. I think you called it Student Pruner.
Yes.
And would you share a little bit about what that is? Because it sounded like a really cool opportunity for the
Yes.
kids.
So that was it's a mentorship program where people give their time. So someone like you would say, okay, I have maybe 1 hour a month where I can teach something to a child in Africa. So we connect you with children from low income neighborhoods, and you basically just speak with them. A lot of times these kids don't have role models. They don't have, like, kids in Tijuana are looking up to the cartel. You don't want that. So you're bringing real good role models for them, women and men, so that the kids can connect and know that there's something. Some of these kids, 4 years ago, we took them to the World Trade Center in Tijuana. They didn't know how to use a elevator.
Wow.
They didn't know what an escalator is. They didn't know motion sensor water. They didn't know, they were flushing the toilets in the World Trade Center. I mean, these kids have never stepped out of these slums.
Sure.
And people get so mad when I call them slums. And I'm like, they are slums. Like, you have to be there to, there's no other word that can describe these neighborhoods. So these kids have never stepped out. Until we got there, they would look up to these men from the cartels who were running everything. They were running the show. Now they have a role model. The women are looking up to me and saying, okay, I don't want to have a baby at 15. I want to be like that. I want to have my own business. The
Yes.
men are looking up to all the amazing volunteers that go down there and say, okay, I don't want to join the cartel. I'd rather do this.
Yes.
So
Amazing.
that's the program where it's mentorship, and you can give your time and coach a child.
It's beautiful.
Or kids. Yeah.
And your website, by the way, if you go to your website, there's a page where you can volunteer. And
yes,
I've
saw
also
your volunteer application. Yes.
Oh, you did? Oh, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, so go ahead and make sure you check out her website. It's Gift Global Initiative.
Yes, ggiusa.org.
Okay, awesome. So one of the things, and I'm mind reading, I was projecting a little bit. Because when I first started my coaching practice, I had worked with a lot of people who had trauma. And at first, when I first started that work, it was draining for me emotionally. And then over time, something else happened. I was able to step out of that. And then I became professional about it. And I was able to serve, frankly, and not be, I could just serve in that capacity. And I was watching this interview with you, and you said there's a difference between empathy and compassion. And so for people who have a big heart and they feel drawn to this type of work, I think one of the charity things that I did in college, I remember personally being very affected by it emotionally. And so I'm curious, what would be your advice for somebody who really wants to serve, but it's difficult for them in terms of the emotional impact on them? Do you have a take on that? How they're able to kind of take a different stance or a different mindset that allows them to take what they're feeling, maybe put that aside so they can show up and serve in a more effective way?
Yeah. I don't know if you know, I teach meditation.
Oh, cool.
I teach meditation to meditation teachers, because I have been a medium since I was 3 years old.
Wow.
And I come from a family of mediums, but it came naturally to me. But I trained myself, and I trained meditation teachers. One of the things I tell people is people who want to do good work.
Yes.
People in the nonprofit sector, in industries where you're a caregiver. You're very empathetic to begin with. You're feeling everything. You walk into a room, you feel the tension in it. You feel like happiness, sadness, you really, really feel it.
Yeah.
That's you being empathetic.
Yep.
But that's also a muscle in your body. So about 6 years ago, I went to a local dog rescue, Boxer Rescue LA, because I have a boxer. I grew up with a lot of dogs, so I love dogs. So I go to this rescue day one, and I saw these amazing dogs in there. They were really taken good care of. They had food, water. The volunteers loved them. So I go there first day. I couldn't stay there more than 30 minutes. I was so affected by it, I left. And this is like, I spent 20 years doing the work I do. And yet I couldn't take the fact that these dogs were abandoned by their family. And I just like ran out. I was like, 30 minutes, that's it. I'm going to start crying. I went there the next day. I could stay there 1 hour.
Sure.
Now I go there. I can stay there an entire day. I don't cry because I don't see them as suffering. I see them as in good hands to be empowered.
Yeah.
So the more you do this work, your empathy turns into compassion. And the difference between empathy and compassion is that when you're empathetic, you feel everything to a point that it makes you really, it's like embodying the other person, right? So you see a child suffering and you become that child. You really feel the pain.
Yeah.
But what that does is you're unable to act. You're unable to change the situation when you're crying yourself.
100%.
When you keep doing the work, do it for a week, 2 weeks, and you'll notice that your empathy becomes your compassion. So now you're looking at the same child 7 days later and saying, okay, I'm done crying. Let me do something about it.
Yes.
So that's the difference between empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
And you'll always reach that point when you give your time to something. It's persistence. It's being committed to something. It's not showing up once and never showing up again.
Yeah.
Because the next time you show up, you're still going to cry. So that's how I explain it. Empathy is not being able to act and change. Compassion is where you see it and you say, okay, I'm not allowing it to affect me to a point where I can't do anything about it. I am going to put myself in a position where I can change it.
So I love that. And it actually reminds me of something that somebody told me once. He said that when your empathy is there, you're literally, and this is what you just said, you're stepping into that person's shoes. And he said with compassion, it's being able to step out of that person's shoes. And then he said the root word of compassion is to walk with, compassion, I think.
Yeah.
Instead of stepping in, you're stepping with, like walking with that person.
You come with passion.
Come with passion. Yes. Amazing. And I had the same experience. So at first it was very difficult. And then over time I built muscle and now it's easier for me to do that.
Yeah. It's like working out your body. You're just working out your mindset.
Yes.
You know, when you show up in the gym and you have thin arms and a month later you're like, you know, you have great biceps. So that's exactly what happens with your mindset. If you continue doing the work over time, like I see horrific stories every day. Like I've been to Yemen, I've been to Congo, like I've been all over the place where all you see is suffering around you. But I don't see it as suffering. I see it as a situation that is now in my hands and I can empower.
I feel the same way. And actually the biggest shift for me, and I actually heard you talk about this too, was gratitude. So I started looking at those situations, not as the tragedy that it is. I started saying, what an amazing opportunity I have to help. And I started focusing more on being grateful for this opportunity rather than the pain of the moment. So in your LinkedIn profile, right, it says you stand at the corner of purpose and profit. And I want to know more about that corner and where is that corner? What's going on over there? What is that intersection of purpose and profit?
So I look at nonprofits as the middle point or the balancing act between the private sector and the public sector.
Interesting.
Okay? What I think is private-public partnerships fail because the private sector doesn't trust the government. And the government, in most cases, doesn't have their act together to actually use the money that's being given to them by the private sector to bring about change. That's where nonprofits come into play. So that's the intersection of the private and the public sector.
Gotcha.
Having said that, I also work with the private office of the royal family in the UAE. So what that allows me to be, let me put it this way, like an investor almost. So if you have a great idea, if you have a great business plan, whether you are a startup or whether you are an existing company trying to get your act together in the golf, bring that business plan to me. We take it back to the private office, to the royal office, and they fund it. They give you this because Dubai is what New York was in 1975. Everyone wants to be in Dubai right now because there's so much money, new businesses coming in, opportunities. And what that allows me to do is from a humanitarian standpoint, I can say that, okay, company A, you want to get into the GCC, I can bring you to the private office. They can provide you with the support structure that you need to expand and succeed because they wanted to, you wanted to. However, wait a minute, you will give 10% of it to a humanitarian cause. And what you're getting is you're getting direct access to this wealth and support team that is waiting for you to just step into the GCC and see you succeed.
Wow.
And most companies want that. Most companies want to be, they want to expand, whether it's in the GCC or anywhere else. So that's the intersection where, it's very important for me that these companies are growing, think about giving back, not as giving free things away, but as partnership. I want them to look at giving back, like you said. You're going to grow your customer base because the young kids want you to do good. They want you to be associated with a social cause.
Right.
And they'll buy from you. They'll be loyal to you if you can lead by that. Look at Tom's shoes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? They are probably $1 million, $1 billion company. I don't know what their valuation is today, but they got there real quick. And they were not saying buy my shoe. They were saying buy a shoe, give a shoe.
Yeah.
What happens is when you start young, when your customer base is young, when they reach a point where now they can buy your product, they're going to stick with your product.
Yeah.
Also, when Tom Shoe said, okay, buy a shoe, we are giving a shoe away in Africa, the kids who are receiving that shoe in Africa or wherever it was, they're going to grow up at some point and make their own money. And all they knew the entire life was Tom shoes.
Right.
And that's exactly what they're going to stick with.
Sure. 100%.
So teaching these companies to say, look, this is not, you're giving mindlessly. You're writing a check to a $1 billion nonprofit that does not think it's cool to put you on their website either. All you're receiving is a thank you note, a thank you card from the CEO.
Right.
How about adding some shareholder value to your company by leading by the social impact initiative? We made an amazing commercial for Coke. So Gift has a media wing inside it. What we do is, this is how we are a little different because I call ourselves a diplomacy organization than just a nonprofit. So Coke donated to solar lights in Tijuana.
Okay.
They didn't ask for anything. They just gave money because they wanted to give money. We created a high resolution advertisement for them that showed that there was a Coke bottle and you put the portable light on it and the child's studying, but it's an ad. And instead of watching a Coke ad where two women are on the beach drinking Coke, how about creating an ad where you're showing what Coke is really doing out there? And it's powerful. People get to see that Coke's doing all this good work.
Well, it makes me feel good about drinking my Diet Coke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. There you go. And you just, right there, you just added shareholder value to your company. You're branding yourself as this amazing company that's making billions of dollars. But you know what? They're making it and they're giving it back as well.
I love that. That's amazing. So you've probably been watching a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of companies then. And tell me, are there certain projects that fascinate you? Tell me about people who are doing really cool stuff through your eyes. What do you think is the coolest stuff that people are doing right now?
Oh my God, we get so many ideas pitched, but there are two things which really recently, one was water. So there's this company that's creating water that you can drink from a similar technology that works like air conditioning. So in areas where there's no water, they set up these machines, and that machine, it doesn't need water source. It creates water from the moisture in the air.
Oh.
And it's drinkable. You can drink that water. It's clean.
Yeah.
And I love it because people have water problems all over the world, So if I can bring you, again, if we can get you to the GCC, to the Middle East, and get you funding and get you out there, how many machines can you donate to Africa? How many machines can you donate to Mexico? You know what I mean? And then the other one that really, it's renewable energy. It's an existing company in the US. I think they're valued at probably $600 or $700 million. So it's not a startup. It's a company that's growing, and they create, renewable source of energy. I don't want to get into their technology, but it's a very cool idea to me what they're doing. It's a little different than what most people are doing with renewable energy source.
Fascinating. Yeah.
And they're only in the US, and we want to bring them to the Middle East as well.
Wow, that's very cool. When you think about the role of purpose in your own life, or perhaps in the role of some of the entrepreneurs that you've seen, one of the things that I've learned is through just case study. Like if you look at our most successful people, and this is really what my coaching practice, ultimately what I want for people, I want them to be as successful as they want. I want them to create whatever life they want, because I have a belief that at some point you're gonna have to want to go beyond that in terms of giving back. I think really the ultimate growth only comes from purpose and mission. That's my belief. And not everybody wants that. Not all of my clients are ready for that. But I think if you reach a certain level of fulfillment, or success rather, the only thing that's left is to make a meaningful difference. And one of the things that I've noticed about the most success, like if you look at Elon Musk, he's not trying to create an electric car company. He's trying to save the planet from ourselves. He's trying to get us to Mars, because he knows if we keep living this way, that life on Earth may not be sustainable, right? So he has a mission that is pulling achievement out of him. And I'm just curious if you've seen a similar thing with purpose-driven, mission-driven people. If the people who do have a strong sense of purpose or a mission statement, do you notice a difference in them, or what they're capable of? Have you noticed it in your own life?
Yeah, I've noticed two things. The first one is, like you said, they're mission driven.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about making money. It's about change, transformation for them, right? And they do it in their own ways, in subtle ways. They're not pitching it as charitable giving, but they're still changing. They're transforming things.
Yes.
Like Elon Musk. In his head, I'm pretty sure he's changing the planet and making sure the life is better for everyone, right? So yes, definitely. But what that little thing over there about giving back, humans are wired to give back. Because think about this, right? And I always give this example. Buy a shoe for yourself. Your satisfaction will last for 2 days. Day 3, it's going to feel like an old shoe to you, right? Help someone. Just give water to a homeless person on the street. You'll look back at it a year later and be like, oh, I feel so good because I gave someone water.
Yeah.
The difference there is that giving back puts you in a state of mind of abundance. Why? Because when you're in a happy state of mind, you're attracting abundance. That's exactly what these successful people are doing. They are attracting abundance of wealth. Everything that we see them have in their lives is because their state of mind is of joy, is of happiness, because they believe that they're changing, they're transforming everything for better, and they're giving back in their own way. The other thing about mindset is, so one is obviously when you give back, you attract more, right? And secondly, I feel that like people like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, for instance, they are so close to their intuition. At one point, the entire world can go against them, but they are so close to their intuition. And there's a difference between intuition and instinct. We are trained to go with our gut feeling. Go with your instinct, they say, right? Your instinct is rooted in your programming, which is your past.
Yes.
So everything that happened to you defines your future. Please, your future is not going to be that bright, right?
Right.
So if you base your future decisions on your instinct, which is rooted in your past experiences, your future is going to look like your past. Your intuition is your mind, which is not rooted in programming. And people like Steve Jobs, people like Elon Musk, they're ultra successful people. They are so close to their intuition. They do what their intuition tells them to do, not what other people are telling you to do. Because when you are up against the world, there's always going to be this external force trying to push you and attract you in its own direction.
Yep.
You have to know what's right for you.
I love it.
Yeah.
So what's your intuition telling you? And what's next for Gift? When you think about and you look out into the future, what's coming through for you?
Yeah, my intuition tells me I'm in the right place. So that's great. I'm doing what I love to do. I left the American Red Cross so I could do what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
So that's great, great start. And what's coming for Gift is I want to expand the platform that we have. So right now my platform is social media.
Mm-hmm.
I want to go for the larger platform, which is TV. I want to take Gift, and not just Gift, but this process of helping people, giving back. I want to create a larger platform for it so more people have access to it, and I can learn from them, they can learn from me. I can give a platform to people who are everyday heroes. You know, when we do this work, Peter, I noticed that people who are in a position, humans have a tendency to make stars out of stars, right? So if someone's famous and they talk about mental health, now everyone wants to talk about mental health. It
Yes.
becomes important. But you know how many people are already doing the work in mental health?
Right.
How about we give them a platform? Because here's what's interesting. Activism is great, but activism runs with emotion. When the emotion dies, activism dies.
Yeah.
So it's great to be an activist, but it's better to be as someone who has a strategy. It's better to have a strategy on the things that you want to do. And the strategy is not to run with emotions, but rather to experience things and run with compassion.
So instead of activists, come with strategy.
Come with strategy, come with compassion, not empathy. Activism means empathy.
Okay.
You're empathetic about it. You feel it, so you want that change. You're reacting to it.
So instead of activism, proactivism, maybe.
Correct. Proactivism. There you go.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I really appreciate it. And I'm hoping to, at some point in the future, have you back when we have a little bit more of an audience. So this question just came to me. Last question. I swear I'll let you go. So when you're thinking about putting Gift on television, are you talking about the traditional mediums, or are you talking about Netflix? And then how are you thinking about that? Like creating like storytelling to get
Yes.
people? Yeah.
Yeah, we have something in the pipeline already with that.
Cool.
So hopefully it will get picked by the good networks out there, and they'll say, yeah, this sounds amazing.
Right.
But we already have someone who's working on, it's going to be a reality TV show where we can really highlight these causes and show them what Gift is doing out there in the world, you know, and not just from the humanitarian side, but also from the business side, becoming the intersection, the real intersection of private and public partnerships.
I love it. I'll keep my eyes open for it. So.
Yes, please. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And one more time, the Gift website.
ggiusa.org.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for doing all that you do. Truly.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter.